All right, so today we're diving into something called the 15th door, which is basically the fragile architecture holding up all of our global data. In this explainer, we're going to explore a completely hidden reality, the literally unseen foundation of our entire modern world.
To really get your head around this, I want you to picture an incredibly normal everyday scenario. You're sitting in a cozy cafe, right? Just casually scrolling through your phone. And then, bam, the screen freezes. You try to refresh, but nothing happens. Your messages stop sending. The digital world around you simply vanishes into thin air. Now, you might just think, oh, it's a bad Wi-Fi connection, or maybe a localized power outage. But let's scale this up for a second and see what a true structural failure actually looks like. Because we aren't just talking about your local cafe losing power. Imagine this escalating globally. Banking systems crashed, planes up in the sky, suddenly losing their navigation, international trade just grinding to an absolute halt. You know, we love to think the internet lives up in these fluffy clouds, right? But the stark reality is actually way crazier. The internet actually lives inside these incredibly thin, super fragile glass fibers, just resting on the dark, silent floor of the ocean. Welcome back to another ZMTV Explainer, everyone. It's great to have you with us. Today, this massive vulnerability we're talking about brings us to a concept known as the 15th door. It's this tiny, totally hidden choke point that essentially acts as the master key. It literally decides whether our digital world stays eliminated or plunges into total darkness.
Now, before we can really understand this mysterious 15th door, we got to take a step back and look at what we already know. For centuries, literally centuries, the world's physical wealth has been controlled by 14 maritime choke points. Think of these as the historic physical doors of global trade. They're the narrow waterways and canals that cargo ships absolutely must pass through. If any of these 14 physical doors get slammed shut, we're talking about entire countries facing the immediate threat of economic collapse, or even starvation. Just look at how concentrated this physical power actually is. Take the Strait of Hormuz, for example. It is only 33 kilometers wide. That's tiny, yet it acts like a crucial lung for our entire planet. A massive 30% of the world's oil flows right through this single narrow bottleneck. It's an absolute lifeline for the global economy. And the stakes here? They're astronomically high. Let me throw a number at you. $54 billion. That's not a typo. That is exactly what it cost the global economy when the Suez Canal, which is another one of these vital physical doors, got blocked for just 6 days. 6 days! Just under a week of closed doors, and the financial bleeding was absolutely staggering. So, that brings us to the real focus of today's explainer. While the whole world is nervously watching those famous shipping lanes, the lungs of our planet pumping oil and cargo, a brand new, completely invisible door has emerged, the 15th digital door. And here's the kicker. It doesn't control physical ships or barrels of oil. It controls the nerves. It controls the very data that runs literally every single aspect of our modern lives. So what exactly is this 15th door? Well, often it's just a tiny, totally isolated island. Picture these incredibly remote locations, like Guam out in the Pacific Ocean or Diego Garcia over in the Indian Ocean. They look like insignificant little dots on a map, but they actually serve as the critical landing stations for all those undersea fiber-optic cables we mentioned earlier. They are the ultimate digital control points of our era. And let me tell you, getting those cables to those islands, it is an exercise in extreme, mind-bending engineering. Laying down these digital nerves means engineers have to navigate deep, pitch-black volcanic abysses. They've got to carefully lay these delicate lines across constantly shifting tectonic plates. And they're doing all of this while withstanding the crushing silent pressure of the deep ocean floor. Wiring the planet this way is, without a doubt, a monumental human achievement. We constantly celebrate these massive physical structures. We look at the 1,400-foot-long arches of the AT&T Stadium, or we marvel at the 57-kilometer Gothard Base Tunnel, and we are just completely in awe. But honestly, the placement of these deep-sea cables is just as much, if not way more, of an engineering marvel. It really echoes those historical workers who braved 50-degree heat and crushing physical pressure just to connect Europe's early trade routes. Okay, so here is the crucial takeaway. Because our entire digital world relies on this hyper-precise underwater infrastructure, we are facing a massive, massive vulnerability. In geopolitics, there's this concept called the Malacca dilemma, which is basically China's fear that its oil supply could be cut off at a physical choke point. But if even a single digital door is compromised, that isolated fear instantly transforms into a terrifying global data dilemma for absolutely everyone. Now, you might be thinking, come on, how could one tiny island hub,
or just one cable really take down the internet? Well, it all comes down to the human element and the extreme precision these systems require. Just look at the Bangladesh bank heist. $81 million was lost. And you know what it all hinged on? A single spelling mistake in a bank transfer. Yep, one typo. That is exactly how exact and honestly how fragile our digital ecosystem really is.
Which brings us to the modern threats facing this 15th door. We're living in an era of invisible warfare, and the danger isn't always some highly targeted, super sophisticated sabotage at one of these island hubs, though that is absolutely a threat. Sometimes it can be as shockingly simple as an accidental anchor drag from a commercial ship just snapping a cable in half. On top of that, adversaries are now using GPS spoofing and signal jamming as invisible weapons. They can literally lead drones and ships off course, completely rewriting the geopolitical map, all without firing a single missile.
And if a bad actor actually manages to gain control of the 15th door, the consequences are genuinely chilling. An adversary could simply unplug an entire nation's access to the rest of the world. Just like that, completely disconnected. They would be left as isolated as the famous ghost soldier, the guy who kept fighting in the Philippine jungle for 29 long years, totally unaware that the rest of the world had moved on. Just imagine an entire modern country plunged into that level of historical isolation in a matter of seconds. It's wild. Ultimately, this whole concept of the 15th door reminds us of a really deep, shared historical truth. Despite all of our dazzling high-tech advancements, our modern civilization is built on a very fragile foundation. Think about it. Whether it's an ancient drive line used by hunters 10,000 years ago or a delicate fiber-optic cable used by high-frequency traders today, the physical paths we choose to control completely define the course of our history. Thank you so much for tuning into this ZMTV Explainer, and we really hope you found it as fascinating as we did. Because the world is just full of these hidden systems quietly holding up the infrastructure of our daily lives. Uncovering them completely changes how we view power and connectivity. So I want to leave you with one final provocative thought today. We are rapidly moving into an era where the most powerful weapon on Earth isn't a nuclear bomb anymore. It's the ability to control the flow of information. So the next time you look down at your constantly connected phone, I want you to ask yourself, if the foundation of the internet is this fragile and governed by invisible 15th doors lying at the bottom of the sea, who truly controls your reality? Think about that for a while and keep questioning the world around you.